In today's video, I'm going to be discussing and answering the frequently asked question, how do blind people get around? The answers are coming up. Hey everyone, it's Matt. Welcome back to another Blind to Billionaire video. Today I'm going to be discussing and answering how do blind people get around. So as for me, I stopped driving a little over 14 years ago. And ever since then, without fail, when I meet new people and I tell them that I no longer drive, one of the very first things they ask is, well, how do you get around? So I thought, you know what, I'm going to start a short video series of frequently asked questions. So I'm not going to have a specific schedule about these frequently asked questions videos, but I'll just sprinkle them in here and there. So this is my first video, how do blind people get around? So this is actually somewhat of a two-part question. So the first part being, how do we get around? Like, how do we transport from here to there? Being like, let's say we need to travel 10 miles or 10 kilometers. How do we get there? So that's one part. And then the other part of the question is, once we arrive at our destination, how do we travel? Like, how do we traverse the terrain wherever it is that we are? So let's get into the first part of the question. Now, for all of you who are blind or visually impaired, of course, this is going to be repetitive and you already know the answers, but hopefully this video is going to be somewhat helpful for people just stumbling across this, wondering this very question. How do blind people get around? So the first part of this question is going to be, how do we actually transport, like I said, for example, 10 miles? How do we do it? Well, a lot of people who are blind or visually impaired are trained in something called orientation and mobility, or cane travel. Or, so there's another way, a lot of people who are blind or visually impaired to an extent also have a guide dog. So people who are trained with these skills, they can independently use something like public transportation, Uber or Lyft, things like that. And then for people who are maybe less trained or maybe don't feel comfortable using these other services like Uber or Lyft or public transportation, or in some cases, I don't even know, are taxis still a thing, or is that just like a dinosaur now? I don't know, but you know, that's also an option too, maybe taking a taxi or like a airport taxi or something like that. But for people like me who don't actually have all of the skills quite yet to travel on my own, I use people like my family, friends, and I use people like that. So people that I know in my personal life who are willing to pick me up, take me to where I need to go, drop me off. So I use people like that, like sighted guides. So those are some of the ways. Otherwise, of course, if you're in like a major metropolitan area, you could take something like a train or a light rail, or some kind of transportation on some kind of track. So of course, we get around the same way that sighted people get around, but we need to be a little bit creative and use other ways of getting around versus actually just going outside, jumping in our car, and driving to wherever our destination is. So we use all of those same methods, but we figured out a way for to delegate that work to someone else who actually has the vision to operate the vehicle, the mode of transportation that we're taking here to there, from point A to point B. Okay, so let's get into the second portion of the question. Once a blind person or visually impaired person arrives at their destination, how do they actually traverse the actual area? So there's actually a few different ways that can be handled. So how does that person actually navigate the area? One way is with a white cane. So it's just a universal sign that we use all over the world, a white cane with a red tip, and that person just uses the white cane to navigate wherever they are going. One other way is a sighted guide. So in some situations, for me, for example, I'm not fully trained with a white cane right now. So I strictly rely on a sighted guide when I go to different places. Now, what is a sighted guide? A sighted guide is just simply someone, a person, maybe it's a friend, a spouse, a family member, it doesn't really matter, just a person who basically just acts as the blind person's eyes and helps navigate. Now, what is another way? Another way is a guide animal. In most cases, it is a dog, but there are other animals that also act as guide animals. And this is very similar to the sighted guide, but instead, rather than it being a human, it's actually an animal. Now, there are other ways. So let's say someone is visually impaired, but they can still see, pretty well. they may navigate independently, but they may choose to navigate and only go out during certain times of the day. In many cases, people with retinitis pigmentosa like me, we have very bad night vision, like we have, very limited night vision. So a lot of us prefer, who have, still usable vision, we prefer to go out during the day, during very specific lighting so that we can actually navigate on our own. And there's a lot of us in this community with RP again, who once it starts getting a little bit dark out, that means it's time to head back because, it's really difficult in the dark to navigate. So anyway, those are just some simple ways that blind and visually impaired people navigate as well as transport from point A to point B. So anyway, I hope you enjoyed this video. This is just a quick video answering a frequently asked question that I have heard so many different times, and I hope this video is somewhat helpful. So today's shout out is going to go to Blind Guy 19. Dale, hey, congratulations. Thanks so much for being here. Dale's been a great friend. He watches every video and comments, and I just really appreciate your support. So thanks again, Blind Guy 19. I appreciate it. If you're new here, I'd love it if you subscribe. Otherwise, if you have any comments or questions, please feel free to stick those down below. And I do personally answer every single question and comment that comes in on this channel. Thanks again, and I'll see you again very soon. You can't wait.